I'm Pedro Silva.
I'm Daniel Rosa.
And this is
Drinking with the Saints. Today, we're talking about St. Gianna Molla, August 28th. But before we do, Pedro, who is this wonderful person next to you?
So this beautiful redhead is going to be my future ball and chain, my fiance right now, but she is incredible, and this is one of our favorites.
St. Gianna Molla?
Yes.
Well, I want to be able to dive into her story, ask particular questions about her, St. Gianna, and her husband, Pietro's relationship. But some fun facts about her. St. Gianna Molla just came through the 20th century. She was canonized very recently. Millions of people came out. Why? St. Gianna, and correct me if I'm wrong, she was a saint who lived a simple life, in such charity and humility that her sacrifice of her life, the moments where she entered into her holiness was laying down her life for the baby she carried in her womb, her fourth child. That she had 3 kiddos with her husband Pietro, and it was a difficult pregnancy where it was a decision between choosing the life of the baby or the life of her own life. And she said, "Save the baby, save my child." And what's beautiful is that at her canonization, all 4 of her kids, the 3 that were born at that time and the youngest one, were present. What can we take away from St. Gianna in that sacrifice?
Yeah, I think she's a beautiful example because, first of all, she was a wife, mother, and a physician. And so just looking at how she ordered her different callings, how she was a wife first and then a mother to her children, and then from the love that she had for her husband, her children kind of overflowed into the community that she served, especially with like women's health care. So
that's pretty cool. I like how you just kind of said that there was an order to her life. That first came her marriage with Pietro, then the being a mother, and then the physician. Kind of want to dive into what that marriage meant. I mean, y'all have been going through the letters that they wrote to each other. Yeah. What has that been like, learning more about Pietro, this husband that is behind a great saint? Is he really behind? Is he in the shadows? Who is Pietro?
So it's interesting, as I was, kind of reading his backstory through the book, and then reading his letters, is there's a lot of similarities I feel between him and me, and particularly how he kind of like a rough upbringing, but surrounded by loving parents, but kind of on the poor spectrum. Gianna's rich, she comes from a very rich family, but Pietro was just a man of virtue. He had a tenacity in his studies that he was able to rise fairly quickly in his company, so much so that he saved Italy's commerce, like through his inventions that he did.
Wow.
But one of the things I love about him is his faith, and particularly his love for Our Lady of Good Counsel. It was simple faith. He went to daily mass when he could. He prayed. He was also part of a Catholic organization at the time, like fighting for workers in the government. So he was very involved in the political life of Italy and how to bring Catholicism into that life. And that's eventually where he met Gianna as well, because Gianna was also very active in these Catholic organizations that promoted these works of justice.
Wow.
Yeah. So so it's interesting because they met later on in their life. They're sort of like an older vocation at the time, but don't let their tenacity like get in the way of saying like, oh, these people didn't know how to show emotion. Is like, no, their letters to each other are so beautiful in the way that they're able to share their hearts with one another. And I think that was important for us since the beginning, was to share everything.
Wow.
And that's something that he exemplified for us.
So y'all's marriage coming up this summer, which is super exciting. Reading this book together, the letters of their love, their affection, how has it impacted y'all, and what can we say to the audience now, what can we draw from their relationship? Yes, she offered her life for her baby. What was her marriage like? What was their marriage like?
I guess for me, it gives me hope as someone pursuing the married vocation, because I think sometimes we think that sanctity is for people who only stay in the church 24/7, who are very neat and clean and pray all the time. And so to see Gianna and Pietro and in their love for each other, their relationship, especially talking about the physical affection that they had for each other, it was just very endearing and very real. Just kind of gives me hope in the simplicity of sanctity, that's attainable, and that's what we're all called to. Married, religious, everyone is called to this vocation, so it's good to see wholesome married couples who are both in the working field and lived recently. So she was born in the 1950s, and passed away. Oh, she was born in the 1920s, passed away in the 1950s. Okay. So still pretty recent. But they just give me hope for seeking sanctity through the married vocation.
That's so cool. Same for you?
Yes. A big thing for me, what called me out of seminary was in prayer, the Lord asked me, what if I were to ask you to love, pursue, and care for my suffering son in the heart of your wife? And that's something that they talk about a lot, is the sacramental presence of Christ in one another.
Wow. And
how they love Christ by loving each other. And so that's something that's really big for me. It's been since I left, it really is that pursuing, caring, and loving Christ, suffering Christ within the heart of Eleni. And that's going to be a lifelong task, and but the honor and the privilege to be called to love Christ in another so particularly and vulnerably, and to see, to experience the Trinitarian love in this one flesh union that will one day take place.
Yeah, I absolutely love hearing that both of y'all are hitting on simplicity, vulnerability, but presence. That the letters that they wrote by hand, not texting, not emails, but by hand, that they shared their affection, they were present to each other. And that when they looked into each other's eyes, they really saw the window into their soul. For me in particular, St. Gianna is the patron of my high school pro-life club, which, funny enough, Father Armando was a teacher sponsor back in San Antonio at the time.
Was he just as grumpy?
Yeah, grumpy cat. Yeah, absolutely. And, he was a teacher sponsor after I graduated, but what her example meant to us, and to this day, it's been going strong for, I think, 7+ years now, is that we laid down our life by being present to the students, to the families, and that when they witness in front of the abortion mill, when they go to DC for the March for Life, when they go to Austin, and when we host different dinners or speakers, that we're calling attention to the voice of the unborn. We're calling attention to the voice of mothers and fathers who are crying out in need of in those times of difficult pregnancies, but also those, and this is near and dear to my heart, those who are post-abortive, mothers and fathers in the shock waves of abortion, that we are present to them, hear their story, and walk them through the path of healing. Presence just seems like that's their cup of tea right now.
And Pietro traveled a lot for work. And Gianna gave him, ever since their engagement, she gave him a photo of herself. And so in his letters, he couldn't go to sleep until he wrote her a letter every night and kind of go through his day and share with her how these things reminded him of her, and how he wished that she was there to experience them, because she was a lover of nature and beauty, And so he would say in his letters, yes, I take your picture and I just kiss it. They talk about that presence. So he always carried her with him everywhere he went.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what a joy to talk about St. Gianna. Any final thoughts?
The one that keeps coming to mind, honestly, is just going back to kind of how Gianna did lay down her life for the sake of her child, because she did see children as a gift, and her being a physician, she knew the hardship that a lot of women went through when it came to pregnancy, and especially in today where fertility is becoming something that's more difficult.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to see that from Gianna Molla's story that a lot of women's clinics and women's health centers are developing. I know there's one in New York, one in Florida, that are kind of helping guide women throughout their pregnancies, throughout helping them decide through like natural means, like how they can conceive and how they can continue to foster and care for life within them. So
Wonderful. Oh, that's awesome. Saint Gianna Molla,
Pray for us.
thanks for tuning in to
Drinking with the Saints.